Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani, and today's video is going to be on how to get adequate amounts of vitamin D. I did a previous video on some of the unknown benefits of vitamin D outside of the conventional benefits. We'll kind of review that, but if you want to get more info on that, watch that video. I'll put a link up where you can click to get access to that. But again, how to get vitamin D. So first, vitamin D is actually, we call it a vitamin, but it's really a hormone. The sun actually shines down on us, and the UVB radiation hits our skin, right? And there's pre-cholesterol in the skin. Our body then makes vitamin D3 through the synthesis of the sun hitting the skin, and that vitamin D3 passes through the liver, and that D3 is then converted into 25-hydroxy-D. And this is what's typically being measured on lab tests, and we'll go in down at the bottom on lab testing specifically. So that 25-hydroxy-D actually has the ability to bind into receptor sites all around the body. That's kind of the cool thing with vitamin D. Conventionally, we thought vitamin D was only basically there to help with calcium and phosphorus mineral regulation. So for instance, you see pictures back in the early 1900s and such, you're going to see kids with rickets, with the big bow-leggeds. That's because they had low vitamin D. They had inability to mineralize their bones properly because calcium and phosphorus is highly regulated by vitamin D levels. And they were actually treating this back then with sunlight and cod liver oil. How about that? But essentially, we've come to realize through the research of the last 10 or 20 years that vitamin D has so many other benefits. It regulates over 800 different genes. It has benefits with immune function, weight loss, sex hormones, and with autoimmune conditions on the rise. There's a lot of information, a lot of research. The Journal of Immunology cites that autoimmune conditions or death by autoimmune disease are the number 3 cause of death. And it's not that you're dying from an autoimmune condition like lupus or Hashimoto's, but it's the inflammation from those conditions predispose and push cancer and heart disease and diabetes. And essentially, chronic inflammation really is the underlying kind of mechanism for all disease. So whatever we can do to reduce inflammation is going to help with just overall feeling good and living longer and adding more quality to our years. So again, how does your body make it? We kind of talked about that, and our body is primarily converting 25-hydroxy-D, and this is what we're lab testing. Now that 25-hydroxy-D then gets converted by the kidneys into 1,25-hydroxy-D. So some people will actually measure both. There's this protocol called the Marshall protocol, where they'll look at both 25 and 1,25-hydroxy-D. This is calcidiol, this is calcitriol, and this supposedly is the active vitamin D. But the research shows that this is really the better way to test because this is the storage. This is looking at storage of vitamin D. So it's kind of, if anyone's familiar with lab testing, we have serum iron. We look at serum iron for an iron deficiency, but a better marker is actually ferritin. Ferritin is like the storage of iron. So ferritin is the better marker for looking at iron deficiency, even though it's not the active serum. Same thing with vitamin D. The vitamin 25-hydroxy-D is like ferritin is to iron diagnosis. So again, what does it do? We already talked about that. Vitamin D3, there are receptors all around the body, especially in the sex organs, and it's shown that vitamin D can actually stimulate biosynthesis of sex hormones. And we know these sex hormones, testosterone has a huge bit to do with mood and muscle growth, and we know estrogen in females, which vitamin D is shown to help with biosynthesis of, can actually improve neurotransmitter function because it helps with the reuptake of dopamine and GABA and serotonin, which can allow us to feel better and to feel more relaxed. So again, lots of benefits outside of the norms. Also weight loss. My last video, I go more into this, but it's shown to help with insulin, making our body more sensitive to insulin, and also lowering inflammation. That kind of dovetails with everything else. And it really, really, really helps with autoimmune conditions. I see so many people with leaky gut. Leaky gut's kind of like the paramount, the first domino of autoimmune disease. When we have leaky gut, we're predisposed to Hashimoto's, which is just autoimmune of the thyroid, type 1 diabetes, various neurological brain diseases, MS, Parkinson's, also intestinal diseases such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and celiac disease. So lots of autoimmune conditions. Vitamin D needs to be the first thing you look at right next to diet to really help balance the immune system. Now let's talk about lab testing a bit here. We mentioned 25-hydroxy-D is the test to run if you're going to really look at your vitamin D levels. Again, we have kind of the old lab ranges, which are more the lab ranges to starve off rickets. So they found that if you were kind of above 20 or right around that 20 range, that you were okay, that you were safe to be to avoid rickets, which is that bone disease that causes the bowing of the legs. Now the problem is with the new benefits of vitamin D that we're seeing in the scientific literature, and to get more info on that, go check out the Vitamin D Consul's, the Vitamin D Council's website. A couple of physicians have put that together and really done a lot of research looking at the outside benefits of vitamin D. You can also Google Dr. John Hollick. He's over at Harvard and BU. He's done lots of research on the immune benefits of vitamin D. But the newer lab ranges are saying above 30 is a minimum. Above 30, so about 30 to 100. I keep mine at about 50 or 60. And if you have an autoimmune condition, keep it even higher. Keep it closer to the 100 side. So I have an autoimmune thyroid condition, so I'm keeping mine around 60-ish in that upper range. So really important, vitamin D and its immune benefits, its natural antibacterial benefits because it produces an antibacterial enzyme called cathelicidin, which helps lower bacterial levels. So the newer range is 30 to 100, and again, keep it up closer to 100 if you have an autoimmune disease. Now let's talk about vitamin D supplementation. So first off, optimal vitamin D is going to be made by the sun. We make so many other precursor hormones from sunlight hitting our skin outside of just D3. So sunlight's optimal, but we just know, one, there's certain peoples at latitude in the world where they're just not going to be able to make vitamin D because they're up maybe in the northern region of the United States or other areas where the latitude maybe is above 36, 38, in the 40 range, for instance. So sunlight may not be optimal. Also, there's certain times of the year, ideally spring to fall is where vitamin D is going to be optimal to make it. And based on where the Earth falls on the axis there, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is optimal. So you have a small window between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and then a small time of the year. Again, if you're down south, if you're in California or in Austin, Texas, where I am, obviously there's more opportunity there, but people work, they're inside. So sometimes sunlight may not be optimal. And also, you got to expose yourself to the sun. So for myself, I had to go out wearing shorts and keep my shirt off, and I could get adequate vitamin D exposure. But if you're just going out with t-shirt and shorts, or maybe even shirt and a t-shirt and just long pants, you're not going to get enough skin exposure because it's the melanocytes of the skin. The vitamin D has to hit that. And if you're too covered up, you're not going to be able to make enough. So you really have to be going out there with the goal of sunbathing, or if you're a guy walking around in a bathing suit with a shirt off, or a woman in a bikini type of top, really exposing skin so you can make vitamin D. And for all practical purposes, that may not be right based on the time of the year or your work schedule. So supplementation may be the key for you. So we have vitamin D3 and vitamin D2. There's a lot of research done on this, but D3 is kind of animal-based vitamin D, and then D2 is kind of your synthetic plant-based vitamin D. Vitamin D3 is shown to absorb better. So I tend to go based on the research showing vitamin D3 is better absorbed. So that's the vitamin D that I recommend. Now, if you look at the work of Christopher Masterjohn, he finds that vitamin D taken on a daily basis does better with vitamin K. So if you're taking vitamin D, take it in with vitamin K and even vitamin A as well. So if you're eating grass-fed meat or grass-fed butter, you're going to get adequate amounts of vitamin K for the grass-fed butter. And then other fat-soluble nutrients will come in grass-fed meat and such with a vitamin A. So you want to make sure vitamin D is kind of paired with other fat-soluble vitamins. Now, supplementation-wise, you may want to have our vitamin D higher. So if you're consuming vitamin D by itself, you may just want to make sure you're getting grass-fed butter in your diet and other fat-soluble nutrients in your diet as well. So you're not just getting super high levels of vitamin D without vitamin A and K. So if we have vitamin D super high and then vitamin A and K are low, that's not good. We at least want to make sure our diet has vitamin A in it and vitamin K. With my patients long-term on vitamin D, we have vitamin K2 with it. So then you're getting a decent parity of the amount of both. So vitamin D3 is going to be the supplement you want to use. Now you have pills or you have liquid. So some patients do really good with the 5,000 unit per day with the K2 in it. Or if they're deficient, we'll even go higher. We'll go up to 20,000 units a day. Why 20? Well, because we know based on the scientific literature that just exposing your son, you're going to saturate yourself up to 20,000 units of vitamin D you can make naturally. And how do you know you've maxed it out? Just get to the point where your skin starts to look just a little bit pink. That means you maxed out. You shouldn't be burnt, but just a little bit pink means you maxed out your vitamin D, and that'll be right around 20,000 units. Now here's the really important thing. Don't shower right after you get sun. You gotta wait at least an hour so that vitamin D3 precursor hormone that's on your skin absorbs into your bloodstream. So don't shower right after you get sunlight exposure. Give it an hour to absorb. And again, get the skin pink. That's really important. The darker your skin is, the longer time you have to be out in the sun. So if you have darker skin, you're African American descent or something of that nature, you're gonna need vitamin D supplementation big time. So really, really have to be careful of that. Darker your skin, make sure you're on vitamin D supplementation. So we have the capsules that I talked about, either 5,000 or 10,000 units. I typically use the liquid myself. So in the winter, for instance, I'll use a liquid version here. I'll put how to get this in the information below the video. I use two. I have a liquid with vitamin K in it, and I have a liquid with just vitamin D in it by itself. The vitamin D is better if I'm trying to get to a therapeutic amount. So 20,000 drops, which I'm going to do right now, which is just 10 drops. Just like that, pretty easy, pretty painless. The nice thing is the vitamin D is in a bed of MCT oil or medium chain triglycerides. The nice thing about that is our lymphatic system can take that in without having to produce a whole bunch of bile. So if you have bad absorption or bad gut health, you can absorb a lot of it very easily because it's connected with the MCT. So that's very helpful there. So again, 20,000 units of vitamin D if you're low can be a great starting place. If you're low on the vitamin D scale, do 20,000 for a month, cut it in half the second month, cut it in half the third month. That's a good general recommendation. It really depends how low you are in the lab range, right? If you're around 20, I would do 20,000 units for a month, cut it in half, and then cut it in half again. That's a good general recommendation. Again, depending on where you're at, if you have an autoimmune condition, autoimmune disease, you want to get yourself to a higher level, but definitely get tested. And also in the winter, you want to make sure you're using it. Get a test as well. If you're having a hard time getting a test, you can reach out below and I can get a test ordered for you specifically. But this is one supplement you want and you need to have in your supplement regimen, especially if you're in an area of the world where there's winter, because you're just not going to be able to make that nutrient or hormone if you're from that school of thought too. So again, lots of good info on vitamin D. Check out my previous video on vitamin D. And if you have an autoimmune condition and you haven't addressed the vitamin D component, feel free and reach out below to get more information from me. Well, this is Dr. Justin here signing off. Have a great day.